Karen the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. I have just been really curious about how this is going to look when I start putting it together. So Brillig has a few pieces now. Most of them, well, two of them are not finished yet, but I've laid out what the circles and whatnots that I want to put on there. And then I also started just adding in the vine just for general purposes. The vine probably isn't going to, well, it would be finished for one thing. But just to get some idea of how that would look. And also because I want to figure out what other kinds of things I might want to add in. I could just do a bunch and put them all together like I did with Alice, and it may end up being that in the end, if I'm honest. But as I'm looking at this, I think I want some more vertical spaces, but I also need some more horizontal. And I'm thinking today I might do something like kind of, maybe, never mind. Something sort of like that. But I also want some planar spaces. So when this vine is going through, that it's not covering up a lot of little work that I put into something. So I need kind of a combination of things. And at some point when I get all this together and all the pieces made, then I'll decide how much vine I want and where it's going to go. Is it going to be just one vine winding through? Am I going to have branches coming off here? And what other kind of embellishments I'll do, that's all in the future. But I did want to sort of lay them out and see what's happening with the Toves. For anyone who isn't familiar with Jabberwocky, it's a nonsense poem, and it starts, "'Twas Brillig and the slithy Toves did gyre and gimble in the something or other." I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was that told me that they had memorized that poem in school. Was that Thea, maybe? And it's just, I cannot imagine how you I can't even memorize a poem that makes sense. But anyway, I don't know why Slithy Tove came up when I guess it was smaller pieces that I was making for another quilt. But Slithy Toves have been emerging. There may be more coming. There may be some little baby Slithy Toves coming around. I don't know. We'll just have to see. But for now, I think today I want to work on another vertical piece, which might go on this side of, this side of this Tove. I have to start naming these Toves, don't I? I really need to do that. Work on that. Give me some ideas for what names you think. This was going to be the pink spotted belly Tove, but I mean, we can have species names, but we also need names for the individuals, yes? All right. And so today I'm just going to work on another vertical piece that's going to have some detail to it. Don't know that it's something I will want the vine to go through or leaves to sit on top of. I don't know. That's something I'll figure out when I get there. But I did want to have a look in the meantime at how this is going to come together. And I'm liking the palette very much. I'm almost thinking maybe I need to order some more of that green. That is my limiting factor. It's a Bella Solid, so I can just order some more. It may not be perfectly same dye lot, but it will be okay for what we've got. I will, let me go and show you something else I'm working on. This whole limited palette thing seems to be starting to work for me, which is kind of, well, I guess Alice was limited palette too, wasn't it? Well, let me show you another one I'm working on. This is a piece that I'm working on for a class. It looks more organized than it does. Well, it doesn't look too bad. I know where it's not actually sewed together yet, and the yarn pieces are just to sort of lay out general areas. And this is, of course, going to sit on top. It hasn't, once I start stitching it together, hopefully it will make more sense. And it's, again, limited color palette with 3 different shades of gray, or blue. There are a couple shades of gray in there. And then the green, which actually is 2 different greens, but they're pretty close. So you'll notice a difference, but they aren't, one really deep evergreen and one a bright neon green. So that's coming along, and I don't think it will be too difficult to finish. It's certainly got plenty of seaming and fitting together to go on, but I have figured out what I want to do down here at the bottom. So I have sort of an idea in my head of how this is going to go now. This was the first piece, and sometimes when I do improv, you I have to have a picture in my head. Hardly ever turns out that way. You're accustomed to that if you've been watching my channel. And I did have a sketch and just a thought on how all this was going to be that I did in Procreate. And that piece did not turn out at all as I thought it would, but I like it, and I went with it. That piece, actually, I guess that was the first one that I did, and that was on its own. I didn't particularly like it. It just lacks an oomph, but here it fits into the whole thing. I'm almost thinking it still needs something. I'm not sure what it is, but I'll see when I get the rest together. So all of this is going to be pieced, improvisationally pieced, except the circles, which will be appliqued on at the end. So another limited palette thing, and I'm kind of enjoying that too. I like to try all different things, I guess. Anyway, let's get started on something for the Brillig quilt. Okay, so here we are back at my sewing station. I think the construction project next door may be finished or very nearly finished. Seems to be quiet this morning, so fingers crossed. My limited palette, I'm almost thinking that maybe it's the yellow that's my limiting fabric. Yes, it is. All right, so it's bright lemon yellow I'm going to have to order. In the spirit of using white as just an accent, I think I'm going to do that. I just want to have some wavy detail going on. So this is going to be the little squares in the detail, and the sides are probably going to be green, because looking at what I've got out there so far, where I think this may go, and you remember Alice, this could change 15 times before I actually get it finished. But I think I want the sides to be this, maybe with some accent of the pink and maybe a little bit of this on the exterior or something. I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to start out making the center, which I think will be yellow with these bits of white sort of weaving through it. Not weaving through it, waving through it, I guess. So I am going to, I don't want to make strip sets because the width is going to, I don't know how to describe it. I'm just going to do it, and then you'll see where I'm headed. It's not a lot different from some things we've done before, but the context is maybe a little different. So I'm going to start out with some squares here, and then just do some strips, which may or may, well, they don't need to be straight, certainly, but I would like straight sewing lines so far for the center section. That will change, but, well, maybe I don't know. So what I'm going to do is create strips like this and have these be varying widths. These are different sizes. They could be wavy, they could be small, they could be large, and then sort of distribute these so these white pieces are in various places along that strip, and then we will put green on the side of those. I don't know if that made any sense, but hopefully as I start to put this together, it will make some more sense. So I'm going to sew a few of these, and then I think I can show you where I'm going with it. I have a few pieces here, 5, which is a good enough place to start. And just as a side note, can you believe it? It is chilly here today in September. It's chilly, early September. So It's a perfect day to break out my velvetizer and have some 85% dark chocolate. All right, so I have some different angles going on, some different sizes. I have plenty of length on most of these, don't know what happened there, because I want to be able to shift these around and still have enough to do curves or whatever I want to do with these. I'm not considering that wasting it because I can use it again elsewhere for little details. Now, one decision I need to make is, am I going to put a strip of yellow or something in between these to break them apart a little more? And I think I want to. These are also a little larger than I had envisioned, to be honest with you, but I think it'll be okay. I'm going to go ahead and do them, see how it works out, and then maybe another place in the quilt I will have some small. Now, I have a choice on what goes in between. Yellow would be a perfectly fine choice. It may be what I end up with. I could put some pink in between it. I could put some of the blue in between it, but then I think that takes the focus off of this little bit of detail. And I will have some strips on the side that are going to have little accent bits on them. So I think I am going to put yellow in between. And when I sew them together, I am going to be putting them at angles. I may make some of them smaller, less high, I guess, less in height, and just stagger them so I can do a nice curve there. So I'll just be doing angles. I can either angle these pieces or angle the pieces in between, or a combination thereof. This just depends on my mood on that particular one. I'll be back when I have those put together. Here is what I have done to myself now. I stepped away for a couple of minutes to take care of something, and while I was doing that, my brain went to, well, why don't you put a little something something inside the little white squares? And so I'm going to try this. It would be kind of interesting to put yellow in, but I like having this accent in, so there might be a little pink. I'll either do 1 or 3 of them because I want to do odd numbers. So just 1 might be kind of interesting, and then I'd make sure that if the vine goes over this part, it does not go over this little bit. So I'll do 1. Maybe I'll find out I want a couple more, but I'll do 1 and add it to this mix. It looks kind of a mess, but we're about to take care of that. I have plenty of extra around here, and that's what I wanted. As I started to work out how it was going to curve, then I could shorten up the pieces a little bit because I knew what I was going to do. But now I'm going to just start cutting a curve in here that follows, at least roughly, what that is doing. Now that's a pretty steep curve, but I think we can handle it. And then I'm going to go over here, and it's going to sort of follow that curve in that it's going to weave in and out. But now this looks like waste. It's not. There are a lot of pieces in there. I'll just unsew those and use them in something else. All right. Now, I want something to frame this, and I think I'm going to use, I could use like pink on one side and blue on the other, or I could use, of course, pink on either side and blue on either side. I'm going to end up with green, so these are just going to be narrow strips, just narrow accent strips. Oh yeah, I did, by the way. I did add in 2 pink ones here. All right, let's tackle these. And I'll need a fair width of fabric because I have to be able to cut as deep as this curve. And so what do I want to use? Let's use blue. I know I have more of the blue than I do the pink. I don't necessarily have to have an accent piece on both sides either. Let's start with this side. It's got a little bit of blue moving that direction. So let's add just a narrow blue strip over here. As luck would have it, I have a strip that's the perfect length. I'm kind of surprised. So I'm going to cut this curve. Make sure I have fabric everywhere underneath it. And then I will stitch this curve. Now this is pretty steep, but I'm not going to do anything differently. I may end up doing a little clipping, but hopefully I won't need to. So I'm going to just turn it a little bit to cut the curve, and you'll have probably seen me do this 1,000 times now if you've been following me. And if you have, thank you. If you're new, welcome. This is the channel where, as you can see, we cut and sew and see what happens. All right, now I want to start with a convex curve if I can, and I've given myself that here. So I'm just going to mark where I start. It's not too much of a mystery on this one, but just to be sure. So then I'm going to flip these together. This piece can go into something else. And as per usual, I will post my curves video down in the description, but just basically needle down, go carefully, lift up and shift as I need to. Just gently bring this over, don't tug on it, and make sure you're doing a 1/4 inch. If you're measuring the 1/4 inch, however you do it, at the point where the needle is going down, not the front of the presser foot. All right, no clipping needed. Turned out fine. And I will be adding some green on here. Do I want to put a little strip over here? Maybe not. Let's just do a blue accent here. And again, I'm going to cut a curve. I've got 1/4 inch of the seam already off here, but I have to remember that I'm going to have another 1/4 inch here. So depending on how wide I want it to be, and it doesn't have to be consistently wide, I could make it, I might make it a little wider here. That curve is fairly steep. And it may, in fact, get lost in the seam at some point, and I'm all right with that too. So now we have another curve that we can use elsewhere. And now I'm going to take a strip of green, and I'm basically going to do the same thing. Just follow this curve in the green, stitch it, press it, and then I will do the same thing on the other side, and we'll see what we end up with. In the end, I want the sides here to be roughly straight so that it's easier to piece. I will probably add more than I think I'm actually going to want, because I may in fact want to curve it or do something different with it. So I want to give myself some grace over here. So the strip that I cut for this is going to be reasonably wide, because not only do I need to get this curve out of it, but I want to have that extra over here, and the same for here. As luck would have it, I have the right sized piece in green as well. Who knew? So I'm going to cut this slice. Now, before I do that, I would have the option, of course, to put in a narrow strip of, say, white here. And I've thought about it. I'm still thinking about it. Maybe. Oh, what the heck, why not? Why not? That's my question. All right, let's just put in a 3 narrow strips of white, because 1 won't be enough. And I don't want more than 3. More than that would be too much. All right, so there's where my 3 strips are going to go, because, hey, what else am I going to do with my time, right? And these will be quite narrow. Again, in this quilt, I'm using white as just an accent, whereas I often use it as a background. But in this case, I want it to be just an accent. So 3 accents coming up. And here is our piece with the slivers in it. Not entirely sure how I feel about it, actually. I might have liked it better plain, but this is what we have, and this side is going to be plain. So I will go ahead and do that in the same fashion, and then we'll have this piece ready to add to the quilt somewhere. And here in the end is our piece. This has grown on me. I feel happier about that. I like that that it narrows and gets wider. I really like that. I'll do another pressing on this side, but we've got some room over here to do something if later on we want this to curve or go in a diagonal direction, whatever. We will have some space for that. And that will be it for today. Next week, as usual, who knows? But I do thank you for joining me this week. And I hope to see you next week, whatever it is I end up doing. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. I appreciate you all. Peace out.